It does to me because I can't read another language, and this really bothers me because I've realized, especially reading different translations of the same poem, how vastly different translations are, and I really wish that I could read Persian and read Portuguese and have some kind of contact with that original text. And I'm also aware as an American writer and reader how few texts from other languages are translated into English. I feel like there's so much literature internationally that I can't access, but I hope that we'll be translating more and more books into English so that I can read stories from other places.
Oh, I think it's very interesting. I'm very interested in the fact that a book is translated. And I like books in translations somehow. They do have a different flavor. And I think a good translation into English is both very good English and has a flavor or aroma or something of its original language as well.
You know, I read quite a bit of translated work right now. I just read Story of My Teeth, which is a Mexican novel and has a really interesting relationship to translation. Maybe the first translated writer who really stood out to me, I guess I remember reading Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which I think is translated.
I do. Well, I remember, and I haven't read a lot of books in their original language. I remember reading Albert Camus' The Stranger in high school, and I read it in French, and my French was not that good, but it was such a challenge to get through that book in a good way. I teach to my classes a piece by an author named Mike Bunn, and he talks about reading like a writer. And what he says is, when he was a young student, he had a job working in a dark theater, and he had to read very carefully each line. And what that taught him to do was read as a writer might write. When you write something, you think about almost every word. When you're a reader, sometimes you don't do that. And that's, to me, what's best about translation, what's best about reading in a different language, that you take the time to read slowly and read carefully, like the author wrote it. And that's, I think, the best way to be a writer, right? To put yourself in that place to say, how did this actually come together? What can I use from this piece of writing that I think is important or valuable? Can I read it not just as a reader, but read it as a future or potential or practicing writer now?
I think I'm more curious. I love reading. I prefer reading literature that's written by other cultures because it's a way into that culture. Like, oftentimes if you visit another country, you can't understand what's going on because it's in another language. But when you read the literature, it's like this way in to understand what the people are actually talking about. And so it's a way into that culture. So I love reading literature in translation, and I feel like I'm more alert when I do that than when I'm just reading American literature, which personally I'm kind of bored with, because they all only want to write about America,